Hello and welcome. This is NC Debrief on News Central. The Debrief brings Africa's social stories into focus through analysis, perspectives, and personal experiences every week. We talk about politics, religion, governance, social issues, and much more. And with our guests, we dissect the issues at hand. I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun. Today, we're talking about infertility in African culture. Now, joining me to discuss this is Molatelo Mainetje. I'm getting close.
You're getting there.
Okay,
Mainetje.
Yeah. Okay, see, we must, as Africans, learn. We must also learn. Now, she is a filmmaker who made a documentary about her experience with infertility, and she's going to take us into her experience, and that came with family, traditional medicine, and rights, as well as the orthodox intervention she also tried. Now, don't forget that you can join the conversation using the hashtag NCDebrief and share your thoughts with us. Now, in simple terms, infertility is the inability to conceive. There are two types of infertility, primary and secondary. Primary infertility refers to couples who have not become pregnant after at least 1 year of having sex without using birth control methods. Secondary infertility, which is often also not talked about, refers to couples who have been able to get pregnant at least once but are unable to after that. According to the World Health Organization, infertility affects up to 15% of reproductive-aged couples worldwide. The WHO demographic studies from 2004 have shown that in sub-Saharan Africa, more than 30% of women between the ages of 25 and 49 suffer from secondary infertility, the failure to conceive after an initial first pregnancy. In many African cultures, children can determine the success of a marriage or relationship. Couples, and most particularly women, feel the pressure to have children at almost and basically any cost. So let's start from there. Take us through your own journey in terms of infertility, and later on we'll talk about your film. And I love the title, When Babies Don't Come. Very on the head, just nailing it right there. But in terms of your own journey into finding out that you had difficulty conceiving, how did it come about?
I found out in 2006. After being in a relationship with my ex-boyfriend, and we had decided that we would like to start a family. So we tried for a year, nothing came through, and because I knew that at that time I had a history of ectopic pregnancy where I lost my one tube. That was back in 1999. So fast forward 2006, I'm ready to start a family. Trying for a year, it doesn't work. Then we decided to go and see a fertility specialist. And that's where the news of me not being able to fall pregnant naturally. So that's when they broke the news to me. So I found out then that actually, the joy of having sex and falling pregnant, it will never happen to me. And the only way for me to fall pregnant would be through IVF.
Wow. Okay, so when the diagnosis was given to you, what were the feelings that came with that?
I was shattered. I mean, I woke up one morning, that dream as a young girl, that I'll grow up to become a mother, a wife, it will never happen. So I was shattered for a while, actually. I wake up every morning and just this thought of, oh, by the way, it killed everything inside me.
And it affected the relationship, didn't it?
Of course it did, because 3-4 years down the line, we broke up with the very same boyfriend, because I think he just realized that he's never going to get babies from me. So the relationship never worked.
Now, there are oftentimes misconceptions about infertility, what causes it, what can be used to solve it. Now, going through this journey, what ideas, preconceived notions, and misconceptions did you have to sort of confront yourself?
I mean, first of all, the issue of womanhood, what it means. What it means to you if you're not a mother. So I had to deal with that from all angles, from, family setup, extended family setup, to friends, to the workplace, to the society at large. So the definition of a woman, it's something that I think we need to look into, to say what exactly is a woman. Is a woman a mother, or a woman is, if you are, a woman, I'll say so.
A female of a certain age.
Exactly. So I had to deal with that. But then also there were too many undertones attached to the fact that I was struggling to become a mother. I'll tell you what, I come from a conservative, traditional
society, culture.
Area. Exactly. Where when you reach a certain age, you are expected to prove yourself that you're a woman. And for me, it wasn't something that I could do. And the fact that, you know, I'll tell you that I was the first girl to go to university from my village. And I was the first girl to demystify this thing that a girl is supposed to just become a wife when they get to that age. But that has never qualified me to have that kind of respect.
Wow.
That people will say, but she's achieved so much. It always went back to, but where's the baby? In my language, they will say, "Mwana ukai," meaning, where is the baby?
So without the baby, the achievement is not complete.
Forget it.
We'll get into this redefining womanhood, especially in the African context, because it's a conversation that really has gained ground in the past few years. But we asked a few people on the streets here in Lagos their thoughts about infertility. And right after that, I want us to talk about also the pressure. You've talked a bit about how you were treated, but let's get into that a bit, because that's always an issue for many of the couples or individuals, particularly women who face infertility issues. And so let's see if we can get that video and see what people had to say and their thoughts on infertility.
Surrogacy, I'm a bit skeptical about that one.
If my wife is physically able, I think I'd rather she carried our children. If you cannot have a child by yourself and you can afford it, then why not IVF?
You can adopt someone's child, fine, and take care of the baby. But for me, giving my own child to another woman, I can't do that. Can't be possible.
Me, I won't do that, but that doesn't stop it from not being okay or being okay. So if they are comfortable with it, why not? You know, but for me, I won't do that.
So particularly we asked about surrogacy, if people would be open to it, and also going down the IVF line. I would even add adoption to it, but we know how African cultures are. So when you hear their thoughts and then you think back to your own experiences, what were some of the issues you dealt with, especially with family and friends who many times are well-intentioned and well-meaning, but they don't understand the pressure and the burden and the feelings that they add to individuals when they either watch, and we call it womb watching in Nigeria, people who are counting the months for you immediately after you get married, and they're constantly on you. Have you seen your period? Or when are you people going to have a child? Are you not trying? And everyone is in your business. What was it like for you?
You mean as the years went by? And
yes, and facing the pressure and just getting the response from family when the babies didn't come.
I mean, by the time I actually started thinking about pregnancy, I was 31 years old. And by then, there were a lot of questions. There were a lot of my friends who were falling pregnant and getting married, and there was nothing coming forth for me. And also from the family background, this is not the conversation that I ever had with my family until I started making the film. So they knew that there were struggles with that, but it's a conversation that we never had.
And after the film, have you had it? Are they more open to it?
Now we can have conversations, actually. Yeah. So, and then I'll call it an open secret.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know it's there, but we don't talk about it. But for me, it was easy because as soon as I came out and when I started documenting myself, because then I started attracting a lot of media interviews. It became clear that, you know, I was struggling with infertility. So I didn't get to deal with a lot of questions around that because it was out there in the public domain.
You use the terminology I hear people in Nigeria also use, and falling pregnant. And for many people, they're almost, and there are women who can get pregnant very easily. And the general perception around pregnancy for women is that it's almost like you should sneeze and you get pregnant. Yes. And we fall into it, but that's not really it. A lot of couples actually struggle even to have the first child, and then there is, as we said earlier, secondary infertility that comes into play. What do you think we can do better as Africans, particularly because we are people who cultures are based around having children in the house, and it's a blessing to have many children. How do you think we can do better as Africans and engaging people who may be having fertility issues? Some who have publicly talked about it, like yourself, and others who we just don't see that they've had kids yet. We want to ask, we don't know whether to ask, we want to be nosy, we don't know. How do we engage them? How do we respond with them? How do we even have a conversation with them? Should we even, or should we just mind our business?
I think people should mind their own business. But then for us to get to that point, we need to start changing the narrative. We need to start, when I decided to make this film, the first thought was to break the silence on infertility. I wanted people to see this young girl who is coming out and say, these are the struggles that I'm facing and these are my challenges. And basically, you know, imagine when I started documenting myself, I was already having ideas of happy ending, you know? So I think it starts with that. It starts with us educating one another, family, friends, workplace, society, to say infertility is just a normal medical condition. It is not a curse. Why is it so highly stigmatized? So if we get into these conversations, it wouldn't be such a big deal after all. The cause of my infertility, if I may say so, that my infertility could have been avoided had I had these conversations or learned from other people. Because when I had an ectopic pregnancy in 1999, I lost one tube. But because this is not the conversations that we have, and I was naive, I must say, I was a naive young girl, to not know that once one tube is blocked, there's 50% chance that the other tube is
might
also
have some
blocked.
kind of blockage.
Exactly. But I just carried on with my life as if nothing happened. But then if these are the conversations that we normally have, and also the healthcare system, you know, they give time to counsel and explain to their patients, perhaps we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
That's true.
You know, so we need to educate the young girls as well. We keep saying, you know, don't fall pregnant at an early age, you know, just
wait,
career, chase your career,
do your degree,
you know,
do something for yourself.
But in the process, you don't know what is happening within
internally.
your reproductive systems. By the time you're ready to start a family, it's too late.
You know, you talk about educating the young girls and having the conversation, and earlier we talked about the figure for infertility in sub-Saharan Africa, but we can't have this conversation if we don't also accept that the burden of infertility is unduly and unfairly placed primarily on women. So we also have to have a conversation on whether or not we as Africans realize that this is no longer, with education and exposure, solely a woman's burden. So let me share some interesting statistics with you. So some studies on infertility have found that men are responsible for 20 to 30% of infertility cases. Some studies have even put that rate as high as 40 to 50% of infertility cases, where men are the ones responsible for the couple's inability to have children. Now, what is obvious is that there's also male infertility, and it plays a role in a couple's infertility, but women are on the receiving end of the pressure, of the stigma, of the situation. How do we change that? Because also we have to realize not many men want to have a conversation about their own inability to get their wife pregnant or get a girlfriend pregnant or have children. So they, as typical, tend to keep things a bit more silent. How do we expand the conversation? Because there's obviously many things at play along the path or a journey of infertility for a couple.
I think this subject is actually, you know, multi-layered if you look at it. We live in a very patriarchal society where men should never be seen as the weaker. Exactly. They shouldn't have any weaknesses, and they should, even when they are at wrong, the woman must take the blame. So, like I say, I go back to education, you know, having conversations, and also for the men to take responsibility, to say, you know, those that are struggling, they know that they're struggling with this condition, is to share. We're not saying go out and say, hey, hello, I'm infertile. Yeah. No, it's just internally they need to accept, and also to say, you know, if they know, because some of them don't want to go out and
even get tested.
Exactly, that's the point. So there's just a big shame that comes with infertility, so much that, you know, when we're saying men should also take responsibility for it, we need to first destigmatize infertility. Then people can accept it as a normal medical condition that will require them to seek medical assistance.
Okay, I want us to take a quick time out. When we come back, we'll get into a very pertinent part of this conversation, which is, of course, the conversation around what does it mean to be an African woman, redefining womanhood. Does womanhood have to be tied with the ability to give birth, to have children? And then we'll also talk about her documentary, When the Babies Don't Come. Stay with us.
Africa is rising. Again, we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every race, we find our place at the top. Taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live.
Thank you so much for staying with us. This is still NC Debrief, and our conversation today is looking at infertility in African culture. My guest is a filmmaker who made a documentary about her own personal journey. Molatelo, thank you so much for being with us. So let's get into this idea of womanhood and what it means to be an African woman. And you talked about the fairy tale endings and sort of projecting the dream of motherhood in your mind, and then sort of the reality that came with it. Why is this conversation so necessary? Because we find that for many African women and young girls, until they're a mother, until they're a wife, this feeling of incompleteness, or society sort of preaches that you're not a whole individual, you haven't accomplished everything that society expects, you haven't done the most with your life. So do we need to change that perspective? Some would say that's African, that if we try to change that, that's us trying to become Western. What do you say to that?
I mean, you just mentioned, the definition of a woman today. To say, is a woman
a female of a certain age?
In the film, you actually, I constantly say, I just want to breastfeed my own child. Because to me, at that point, womanhood was all about that.
Motherhood.
There is a part where I say, I feel like a half woman. Because giving birth was the only thing that would qualify me as a woman. So, and again, there's this obsession of motherhood comes with giving birth.
But that's not the only path to be a mother.
That's not the only thing. I mean, you just played vox pops about surrogacy. Yes, it's a very costly exercise, but also there is another option. So does it mean that if you are a mother through surrogacy, someone else carrying your own child, does that not qualify you as a woman? Adoption, So it's just high time that we need to start breaking this womanhood definition into pieces to say, what is a woman after all? Is motherhood everything to a woman? I don't think so anymore. When I started, that's what I thought. Yeah. But not anymore.
Along this journey, your mind has changed. Okay, let's take a look at your documentary. You entitled it "When the Babies Don't Come," and I think that title tends to really sort of hit the subject matter on the head, hit the nail. So let's see if we can get a clip of that, and then we'll quickly talk about what led you to the documentary.
You don't have both fallopian tubes.
I am a man. Well, that's according to my womb. IVF as it is, it's vicious.
So injections, alternative medicine, you've been through the gauntlet of it all. What made you decide to share it in this fashion, in terms of documenting your journey and then putting it out for the public to see, for other women to see?
I mean, when the news came, I wrestled with the idea of documenting myself for 2 years, mainly because of the stigma, because, you know, we all want to appear as this perfect human beings who are flawless. But then being the filmmaker that I am, I'm a storyteller. So I think that fear of what people are going to say about me was overpowered by the storytelling bug in me. So, and I knew exactly what the outcome would be, to break the silence on infertility, to inspire other people who are going through the same thing, and also to educate. I knew exactly what would lead to this film, but also I feared for my personal
relationships.
What was to follow afterwards, you know, because at the time I wasn't married. Then it meant men were starting to, they're gonna start looking at me differently.
Yeah.
To say, no, we don't want that baggage on us, that kind of thing. So I knew exactly what I was putting myself into, and I decided I would rather tell the story because I knew exactly what I was going to do with it.
Okay, we have to stop here, and there's so much more we want to talk about in relation to your documentary and even also to your experience. But just being able to share this time with you and the journey that you've been through, I have to say a very big thank you, Molatelo, for coming here and being part of the NC Debrief today and sharing this journey and using it to inspire other women to also have these conversations. The whole idea is to break the silence. And one thing I always remember is a lot of young ladies, African ladies that I know now, say that we did not inherit the silence of our mothers. So let me just quickly ask, where can we see the documentary? If somebody wants to see the full thing, where is it available?
At the moment, the documentary is still screening at international film festivals. I'm traveling around the world, basically, and we won several awards, by the way.
Fantastic.
But as from next year, that's when we'll take it for broadcast and also on online VOD platforms.
Okay, and we hopefully will also be part of that and help you to bring When Babies Don't Come to you as well. Thank you so much again for sharing your story.
Yeah.
All right, that's as much as we can take on today's NC Debrief. Thank you so much for joining us and for watching. Don't forget that you can continue to be part of the conversation using the hashtag. And until further notice, I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at News Central TV. Our website is www.newscentral.africa. Until next time, stay safe and remember, it's all about Africa first.